There is a reason your life feels heavier than it should. Not because you are weak, not because the world is unfair, but because somewhere along the way, you lost control of the four things that control almost everything else. Your mouth, your mood, your money, and your mind. Think about it. How many problems in your life began with a few careless words? How many opportunities died because your emotions took control? How much stress came from money you spent trying to impress people who never truly cared? And how many nights have you spent awake, trapped inside your own thoughts, fighting battles that existed nowhere except inside your head? Most people spend their entire lives trying to control other people. Stoics spent their lives learning to control themselves. And that changes everything. Because the most dangerous prison is not made of steel. It is made of impulses. The impulse to react. The impulse to argue. The impulse to prove yourself. The impulse to chase validation. The impulse to speak when silence would have made you powerful. Marcus Aurelius understood something most people never learn. A man does not rise because life becomes easier. He rises because he becomes harder to break. Before we go deeper, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and stay with me until the end. Because the final lesson may completely change how you see discipline, self-respect, and the hidden war taking place inside your own mind. Now listen carefully. Because the first thing you must learn to control is your mouth. Not because words are powerful. Because words are expensive. Every unnecessary argument costs something. Every emotional reaction costs something. Every explanation costs something. Every attempt to make someone understand your value costs something. Most people talk too much because they are afraid. Afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being ignored, afraid of losing control, so they explain, defend, argue, beg, convince, and slowly they surrender their power. But have you ever noticed something? The strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest. The person who controls the conversation often says the least, because silence creates mystery. Silence creates authority. Silence reveals character. When someone insults you and you instantly react, they own your emotions. When someone provokes you and you lose control, they own your mind. But when someone throws fire at you and you remain calm, they are forced to face their own flames. That is power, not domination. Mastery. A hard truth many people need to hear is this: you do not need the final word. You need the final piece. The second lesson Marcus Aurelius would give you is, control your mood before your mood controls your life. Most people believe emotions happen to them. Stoics believed emotions happen within them. There is a difference. One mindset creates victims, the other creates responsibility. Think about the last time your mood ruined your day. Maybe someone ignored your message. Maybe someone rejected you. Maybe someone betrayed your trust. And suddenly your entire emotional state became dependent on another human being. That is dangerous, because whenever your peace depends on someone else's behavior, your peace is no longer yours. Human beings are emotional creatures, but emotional discipline separates leaders from followers. A bad mood is like a storm. Most people become the storm. The Stoic becomes the mountain. The storm screams. The mountain remains. The storm threatens. The mountain remains. The storm eventually leaves. The mountain remains. Your emotions are real, but they are not always truthful. Anger tells you to attack. Fear tells you to retreat. Sadness tells you to quit. Insecurity tells you to chase approval. But wisdom whispers something different. Wait, observe, think. Because the emotion you feel today may become the decision you regret tomorrow, and that brings us to the third lesson. Control your money. Not because money buys happiness, because lack of control buys suffering. Many people are broke long before their bank account is empty. They are emotionally broke, spiritually broke, mentally broke. They spend money the same way they spend energy, without awareness, without discipline, without purpose. Look closely at modern life. People buy things they do not need, with money they do not have, to impress people they do not even like, and then they wonder why they feel trapped. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he constantly reminded himself that luxury can become a chain. Because the more things you need to feel okay, the weaker you become. True wealth is not having everything. True wealth is needing less. The man who requires constant entertainment is poor. The man who requires constant attention is poor. The man who requires constant validation is poor. Because dependence is poverty. Freedom begins when your happiness stops having a price tag attached to it. And now we arrive at the most important battlefield. Your mind. This is where everything begins, and where everything ends. Your mind can turn a small problem into a nightmare, or a nightmare into a lesson. The same event happens to two people. One collapses, one grows stronger. Why? Because reality did not change. Their interpretation changed. Marcus Aurelius wrote countless reminders to himself because he understood a terrifying truth. The greatest enemy is rarely outside, it is inside. The voice that says, "You are not enough." The voice that keeps replaying old mistakes. The voice that turns rejection into self-hatred. The voice that creates fear from uncertainty. Most suffering is not caused by events. It is caused by imagination. A conversation that never happened. A rejection that has not occurred. A disaster that exists only in your mind. And yet your body responds as if it were real. You lose sleep. You lose peace. You lose confidence. All because of thoughts you never questioned. This is why mental mastery begins with awareness. Not controlling every thought, observing every thought. Because once you observe a thought, you separate yourself from it. You realize something profound. You are not your fear. You are the observer of fear. You are not your anger. You are the observer of anger. You are not your anxiety. You are the observer of anxiety. And once you see that, something changes. The chains begin to loosen. But there is another lesson people rarely talk about. Loneliness. Many viewers watching this know exactly what I mean. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. You can receive messages and still feel unseen. You can smile publicly and suffer privately. The modern world is connected, yet many souls have never felt more disconnected. Marcus Aurelius spent years carrying responsibilities few could imagine, and despite having power, status, and influence, he still battled the same human struggles. Because loneliness is not always the absence of people. Sometimes it is the absence of understanding. But loneliness can teach something valuable. It reveals who you are when nobody is watching. When there is no applause, no attention, no recognition, no validation. Just you and your thoughts. Most people run from that moment. The Stoic embraces it. Because that is where self-respect is built, not in crowds, in solitude, not in attention, in reflection, not in popularity, in character. Character is what remains when everything else disappears. And that leads us to a painful truth about attraction, rejection, and human nature. Many people destroy themselves chasing people who already showed them they are not interested, not because they love them, because they crave validation. They want proof that they are enough, so they chase, and chase, and chase, until they lose themselves. Marcus Aurelius would remind you that your worth was never hidden inside another person's opinion. Rejection hurts, betrayal hurts, abandonment hurts. But none of these things determine your value. They only reveal reality, and reality, no matter how painful, is always better than illusion. Never beg for attention. Never beg for respect. Never beg for loyalty. Anything that must be forced is already lost. The strongest form of self-respect is walking away from what refuses to value you. Quietly, without drama, without revenge, without hatred, just dignity. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a man can say is nothing at all. And now we arrive at the final lesson. The lesson that ties everything together. Control your mouth. Control your mood. control your money, control your mind. Because they are all connected. An uncontrolled mouth destroys relationships. An uncontrolled mood destroys opportunities. An uncontrolled relationship with money destroys freedom. An uncontrolled mind destroys peace. Most people spend years trying to change their circumstances. Few spend time changing themselves. Yet the moment you master yourself, circumstances begin losing their power over you. You stop reacting to every insult. You stop chasing every distraction. You stop fearing every setback. You stop needing everyone to understand you. And suddenly life feels different. Not because life changed, because you changed. The Stoic path is not glamorous. It is quiet. It is lonely. It is difficult. But it creates something rare. A person who cannot be easily manipulated. A person who cannot be easily distracted. A person who cannot be easily broken. And in a world built on emotional reactions, that kind of discipline becomes a superpower. Remember this whenever life becomes chaotic. Guard your mouth. Protect your mood. Respect your money. Master your mind. Because if you can do those 4 things consistently, there is very little this world can take from you, and there is almost nothing it can do to control you. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.